So Zer0 is one of the more mysterious Vault Hunters that we've seen across the Borderlands games. And while there are other mysterious Vault Hunters like Krieg, because we don't know really who Krieg is, we are at least aware that Krieg is human. As for Zer0, we don't know who he is, and due to some interesting features of his, we can't be entirely sure whether he is an alien, robot, cyborg, or something else, or even something in between. So today, I figured we could attempt to figure out what Zer0 is. And I would like to make the claim that I think that I know what Zer0 is. Now, not necessarily exactly who Zer0 is, but what type of human, alien, or robot that Zer0 might be. But I guess without further ado, let's talk about what we know about Zer0's appearance. Compared to the other Vault Hunters, Zer0 has some very interesting features. Zer0 appears to be quite tall and is very slender, and Zer0 also wears a mask that allows him to emote using various symbols like smiley faces and angry faces that are made up of parentheses and colons. However, throughout the various games, we never actually see Zer0's face, and while I suppose there is a unique head customization for Zer0 that would appear to show Zer0's real face, it's worth mentioning that it's called not canon and is presumably also non-canon as well. At the same time, while we can't be sure if Zer0's other head customizations are canon, heads like Ghost, Motocross Marauder, Blast Shield, and especially Nihilism seem to suggest that Zer0 may be a humanoid of some type. However, unlike many of the human NPCs that the player encounters in Borderlands 2, Zer0's hands contain only 4 fingers or 4 digits, and this trait in particular is really strange because it clearly suggests that he isn't human like the other Vault Hunters and NPCs. In fact, if you look closely at a lot of the NPCs in Borderlands 2, you will notice that all of them seem to have 5 fingers on each hand, as opposed to Zer0's 4. And it's likely this was done deliberately by the developers, as Zer0 may be the only character or sentient being encountered across all of the games that has 4 fingers on each hand. Zer0 is also weird because he frequently speaks in haiku during combat and also while talking to other people. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with haiku, it's a form of Japanese poetry that usually features 17 syllables arranged in 3 lines, with the first and last line containing 5 syllables and the middle line containing 7 syllables. As an example, while you activate Deception as Zer0, he will occasionally say something like, quote, "Your eyes deceive you, an illusion fools you all. I move for the kill." The fact that Zer0 uses haiku to speak is interesting because it would seem to indicate that Japan and perhaps Earth exists or may have existed within the Borderlands universe. Otherwise, I'm not sure how haiku would have come around if Earth hadn't existed. You may also be interested to know that there are some things that are mentioned about Zer0 in the Pandoran Gazette that was included with the limited edition Diamond Plate Loot Chest version of Borderlands 2. In the Pandoran Gazette, there is a question asked by someone named Curious in Oldhaven, and this question reads as follows. Dear Dr. Tanis, I have heard you are acquainted with the Vault Hunter known as Zer0. I've been meaning to ask, that's not really his true name, is it? Hell, maybe Zer0 isn't even a he. Do you have any details on this mysterious figure? To which Tanis replies with the following. Dear Curious, I am indeed acquainted with the towering stack of leather and poorly written poetry that so many refer to as Zer0. As you have correctly noted, Zer0 is not the Vault Hunter's true name. Zer0's actual name and gender are, and as you might expect, Zer0's actual name and gender are never mentioned. Regardless, this is still fairly important because we now know that Zer0 isn't his true name, and it also appears that Zer0 has a gender. So just to recap, Zer0 appears to be some kind of humanoid being. However, unlike most NPCs, Zer0 has 4 fingers on each hand, and Zer0 also speaks in haiku, which may suggest that both Earth and Japan exist within the Borderlands universe, universe, or at the very least, the fact that Zer0 speaks haiku is very unique. And finally, a Q&A article in the Pandoran Gazette informs us that Tanis appears to know who or what Zer0 actually is. While all of this information is useful, it still doesn't really tell us that much. So I think it's important to compare Zer0 to other beings in the Borderlands universe to help give us a clue. As we've discussed, Zer0 isn't human like the other NPCs you can encounter, and this is because Zer0 has 4 fingers on each hand as opposed to the 5 that you'll see on most human NPCs. Zer0's hands also seem to suggest that he isn't an Iridian Guardian either, as Iridians tend to have 5 fingers just like humans do. And if you want a great example of this, the mysterious Iridian or Watcher from Borderlands the pre-sequel clearly shows that Iridians have 5 fingers. As you can clearly see, while the Watcher is wagging its finger at you, you will notice that it has 5 fingers on its hand as opposed to 4. So I would say that because Zer0 has 4 fingers, he can't possibly be an Iridian. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that he isn't an alien of some sort, but I think it's safe to say that Zer0 isn't an Iridian alien. I suppose there is some possibility that Zer0 is a robot. After all, during the plot of Tales from the Borderlands, it's revealed that Loaderbot was the masked kidnapper that took Rhys and Fiona captive. And it may also be possible that Zer0 is some type of cyborg, as we do have many characters like Rhys, Wilhelm, and Gage that all make use of cybernetics. With this said, I don't think Zer0 is a robot, and this is because one of his head customizations is called Not Canon, and the Not Canon head customization depicts Zer0 as some kind of AI core. And while I suppose a robot could be constructed to have 4 fingers, and it's worth noting that a number of doll robots from the pre-sequel do in fact have 4 digits, Patricia Tanis specifically mentions that Zer0 has a gender in the Pandoran Gazette, and having a gender implies that Zer0 is a biological entity, and last I checked, robots don't have a sexual preference or a biological sex. When it comes to cybernetics, perhaps Zer0 makes use of cybernetics and could technically be a cyborg because of that, but just because he may have a couple of cybernetic implants doesn't necessarily make him a total cyborg like what you might see with the Borg in Star Trek. Now, what I'm getting at here is that while Zer0 may use cybernetics, I think he is actually more human or alien than he is a cyborg. Now, I know you guys are probably getting sick of me saying that Zer0 has 4 fingers, but it is important to note that Zer0's 4 fingers are an important feature and are what ultimately prevent him from being purely human. In order to determine what Zer0 is, I think we're going to have to look outside of the Borderlands universe and talk about the use of 4-fingered hands in other artistic media such as cartoons. As you might guess, 4-fingered hands have a tendency to frequently appear on cartoon characters. For example, you may notice that Mickey Mouse and the characters from The Simpsons are drawn with 4 digits rather than 5. And the reason this is done is because it's easier to draw 4 fingers, and it also fits in with the design for some of these characters. And while some cartoons and anime feature 5 digits on their hands, the reason characters have 4-digit hands has to do with the style of the cartoon and the simplicity that comes with drawing those 4 digits. Still, the designers and developers over at Gearbox have shown that they can draw or animate characters with 5 digits, yet they still chose to draw Zer0 with 4. Now, while I said Zer0 isn't an Iridian alien earlier, I didn't specifically say that he couldn't be an alien or some type of alien-human hybrid. And I suspect the reason that Zer0 was drawn with 4 digits is because he is some type of alien. However, the thing is, other than the Iridians, there are no other aliens that we are aware of in the Borderlands universe. I would suggest that Zer0 may actually be either a gray alien or a gray/human hybrid. Now, for those of you that don't know, grays are oftenly depicted in popular culture, and they typically have 4 digits on their hands. just like Zer0 does. Now, while there are gray aliens depicted in popular culture with 5 digits, the more common depiction of gray aliens is with 4 digits. And grays also have many human characteristics. For example, grays are bipeds, they have heads that look humanoid, and like Zer0, grays are fairly slim in stature. And while grays aren't typically very tall, it's possible that Zer0 possesses the DNA that is contained within grays, as well as some human DNA to help make him a little bit taller. Being a human/gray hybrid really explains a lot if you ask me. As an example, think about Zer0's nihilism head customization. Notice how he doesn't have any ears or hair, but otherwise he looks very human-like. Now, if you look at a gray alien, grays typically don't have ears either, or at the very least, they aren't as pronounced as the ears that you'll find on humans, and ultimately, a gray's ears tend to be more flush with the rest of their heads. So I suppose to answer the question posed by this video's title, Zer0 is an alien. However, he isn't an Iridian and is instead much like the aliens that we may think of from science fiction. While this may end up not being true, I'm not sure how else you would explain some of his features with the information we have. He is clearly not Iridian because he doesn't have 5 fingers, and based on what Tana says in the Pandoran Gazette, Zer0 has a gender and therefore couldn't be a robot. Perhaps it's best though that the developers over at Gearbox leave Zer0's identity a mystery. After all, it's pretty fun to speculate about who or what he is. Alright guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like and let me know, what do you think Zer0 is? Do you think he's a robot? Do you think he's an alien? Or do you think he's a human and he's somehow just done something weird to his hands? Otherwise guys, leave a like, click the bell to join the notification squad, and as always, take care, and I'll see y'all next time.